Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk about development corridors for residential property and how to figure out where to center your horizontal alignment or your residential development corridor, and what fits into a development corridor and how it might fit along a residential ridge line so that you can start laying out a subdivision. So let's learn. Welcome back, guys. In this episode I want to show you some techniques to think about laying out a residential development and the development corridor. So here we have a piece of property with lots of topography. This technique will work well when the topography is really steep and you have maybe mountain ridges and then valleys that might have streams in them where you can't do work in the streams. And so we need to think about how we're going to grade across the ridgetop. I've done a little bit of work ahead of time and kind of labeled just so that you can see a little bit more easily what these contours are. And so this one's 980. I've put in some 960 and 994. And for each development, you need to think about what your development corridor is going to be for that particular project. I've done two kind of sample corridors here. This one's where it's dropping down away from the road, and it's about a 5-foot difference from the road down to the back of the house. And then this one is going uphill and it's only about a 3-foot difference. So you can make these more steep, but generally most developers or home builders want their house to sit above the road. So only when there's a big grading concern would you do something like this. This development has a 50-foot right-of-way, 20-foot setbacks, and 50 feet for the house and 15. The total development corridor is about 220 feet. 250 is probably a good number to use for a general development, and I drew that circle too big. I should have drawn it with a radius of 125, which is a development width of 250. So as you can see there, that's about 250. So we can take that circle and start dropping them in on top of your ridge. And what you want to do is think about balancing this, each side of the development corridor. So for instance, after you've built all of this, you really want this to be about the same as that. And even if the initial topography looked like this, it doesn't matter. You're kind of planning for this final condition of this distance. So you want to kind of match this elevation here with that elevation there and not worry about where the peak is. The peak doesn't have to be in the center of the development corridor. So this one is centered over the 994. We'll copy it again. This one's centered over the 990, centered over the 980, centered over the 970, 964, 992, 946, 950, 940, 910. And so now that we've matched those elevations, we can see the shape of a road that you might have. I don't think it really matters which direction you start from, but I'm just going to start from this side and draw a polyline. And I'm going to try to run it through kind of the center of this corridor while keeping everything tangent. Then of course I can just make some adjustments as needed. Maybe that needs to come out a little bit more. That actually looks pretty decent. And now once you have your alignment, you could start offsetting 25 feet each direction for your right-of-way, and then maybe do another 100 feet for the backs of the lots. Maybe you do 20 feet for your building setback. So you can start to see how you build everything off of that center alignment, and then everything starts to fall into place. Now there's obviously other things that you need to keep in consideration and depending on the situation. Um, this one is really very steep in some areas, and so we really don't want to chase this grade all the way down. But let's say, for instance, that there wasn't that much topography and your property was, maybe this width. You would want to fit in 2 development corridors, because if you're paying for the corridor of the road, the curb and gutter, the sewer, the water, the storm, you really want to load that corridor with houses on both sides. It would be a waste to just have it on one side. So if you have a specific width and maybe the topography isn't as steep, you want to think about, all right, what kind of flexibility do I have to fit 2 corridors in this area? And so in this situation that we just have drawn out, we wouldn't want to come over this far and prevent ourselves from putting another corridor in. Maybe we would decide to bring the corridor path through here so that we could leave room for a second corridor, and then just do a big wall there. And sometimes the wall wouldn't be, the cost of the wall is offset by getting a bunch of additional lots. So sometimes that is something that might work out well. But just wanted to go through this real quickly, show you some typical development corridors for residential and how a development corridor might lay out on top of a ridge, and then to think about always double loading your corridors, and this technique of just drawing the circle of your development corridor and laying those out on the piece of property can give you a good idea of how your road should lay out. And that's all I've got. Thanks.